Good morning, Sam.
Hi, how are you, sir?
I'm good.
I'm happy to have you on this interview.
Well, thank you.
Yes, you sound alive. You sound like you had some coffee this morning. That sounds good.
No, I did my 5 miles. I did my 5 miles that I do every morning on a stationary bike, and I just enjoy life.
Amen. Well, all right. Well, let's jump into why you are allowing me some time in your day, which we do appreciate over here. You have a book that's just been released over the course of Black History Month. I'll let you talk about the title and why it's that title.
Sure. Well, the title of my new book, this is my second book, is Racism from the Eyes of a Child. And basically I talk about in this book, I talk about growing up in rural Gaston, Alabama. I was born in 1952. I talk about another small city in Alabama, Marion, Alabama, where we had a lot of notable people like T.D. Jakes, Coretta Scott King, Dr. Young's wife, Jean Young, Oscar Underwood, and some others from this little small town of 2,000 people. And I wanted the first probably half of the book is just talking about my lineage, my family, heritage. Before this book, hadn't researched my family. I could go as far as my grandparents, but I went as far as my great-great-grandparents in understanding who they were, because it's important, Sam. It's important that we know our history, because, one part of racism is to erase our history, because if we don't know our history, we don't have the knowledge of where we come from, or the knowledge of how successful maybe our forefathers were, or the struggles that our forefathers had. And if we don't have the knowledge, then it takes our power. And I'll give you an example of that, of erasing history. If we look at our current president, with former President Obama, that's exactly what he's doing. He's erasing his history.
Yes.
And so that's the first part of the book. The second part of the book, I talk about racism, I talk about colorism, and I talk about a word that's called eroticized rage. And so that's what the book is about. Why did I write the book? And I wrote the book for several reasons. One is for myself. I wanted to get some healing, which I did, and I talk about in this book a lot of things. The second reason is, for my grandkids, so that they could understand and go as far back as their great-great-great-great-great-grandparents. And then lastly was for social courage. And I believe that we're at a point now in America that we need social courage.
Okay, and actually I'm happy you said social courage, because one of the questions I had for you was why do you think a book like this would be relevant in this time? So you kind of just touched a little bit on there. What would you want this book to accomplish in reference to the masses?
Several things. One is that I hope folks will want to go back and understand their family lineage, understand their family history and where they came from, and to do the research. Secondly, I hope that it starts dialogue, and dialogue on racism, dialogue on colorism, which it has, and there was already dialogue, but already this book has certainly brought about a lot of dialogue on colorism, and also social courage. So, social courage to me is what those young kids down in Florida are doing at the high school where the shooting was. Social courage is when you hear someone in the workplace talk about sexism, talk about racism, and you say something. You don't remain quiet. You say something. That's an example of what social courage is.
Another thing is that we know you from the realm of entertainment, business, from that aspect. Do you think that this was kind of like a detour, or does it tie into your overall message as an educator and as an inspiration, motivational speaker as well?
Well, I started out in corporate America. Then I transitioned to an entrepreneurial spirit back in the 80s while I still was in corporate America. And then I transitioned into the music industry, which now is my 25th year. And there's been overlay on all of these. In my past 8 years, I've been an educator at Texas Southern University. And that's where, the rest of my life I really want to transition full-time into education and motivation.
You do touch on a topic that I actually just learned the term, eroticized rage. When you speak about, a mother telling her son, hey, don't bring home any nappy-head girls here,
right.
It's not a new thing to hear. It's interesting that your generation dealt with it. I heard it in my generation. Why do you think that is?
Why do I think my mother said that, or why do I think society feels that way?
Yeah, we could look at both, meaning that your mom said it to you, but why do you think it was even something that she had to say to you?
Well, I think that at those times, again, I was born in 1952. And those times, that was in the South. And the South was a lot different than the North for black folks. That was the lay of the land, how people thought process were. The colorism part that, lighter, white was better. And as a kid, I internalized that.
Mm-hmm.
And I, when you internalize things as a kid, I talk about in my book the years that I've been in therapy. And, the first years I didn't quite understand, what was happening. And then one day there was a moment that I really got it. And it was and my therapist got it. It was the trauma that I had really gotten doing, growing up in Alabama. It was no different than a soldier coming back from Vietnam with the trauma. And a lot of that stuff, I internalized that, and eroticized rage is just the anger and the rage that especially older black men growing up in the South that we had against our white counterpart, and we would date white women to get back our power, subconsciously, of course, not consciously, but subconsciously.
But it is an interesting topic to tap into, really, because it also, not to run away from where we are in the subject, but it is a good segue to another area, because having that trauma can also affect the relationship within the family, and the kids and the generations moving on. But it's interesting, and I'm happy that you also covered that topic in the book. So what I want to do is run to the concept on the cover. Was there a specific reason why you had the cover of the book the way it is?
Yes, it is, because it's the racism from the eyes of a child. And the book opens. I opened the book with telling a story when I was 5 years old. And I was with my grandparents, my mother, my brother, and my mother and my grandmother fought a lot. And so we left one night at 10 o'clock in the country in Marion, Alabama, going to our nearest relative. And I'll be short with the story. We got on this country road, me, my mother, and my brother, and it was just the moonlight, no light other than the moon. And as we were going up the road, we could see and hear cars in the distance. And they got closer and closer. My mother grabbed me and my brother. We got in the woods, in the bush, and she got on top of me and started praying and told my brother if anything happened, to take me and run up under that barbed wire fence and run as fast as we could in the woods. The cars finally got closer, passed, and then once they passed and we felt safe, then we got out of the woods and walked the street, and that was a KKK rally. Ooh. That was my first experience as with racism as a child at 5 years old. So one eye is seeing the story of my life up until the story of my life. That's one eye, and that's the eye you see. If you look carefully in that eye, you see some demonstrations happening. If you look carefully in that eye. And then the eye you don't see is racism as I see it today.
Okay. Well, I do see, I mean, of course, I didn't enlarge the picture, but I do see there's something, like a reflection of a picture in there. But I like the cover. I see you didn't spare the melanin at all, which was good, I think. It sort of really brings the attention, and I think it works with the title of the book as well.
Well, thank you.
So, yes, sir. There's a line where it says your book is sparking an international conversation. I was interested in understanding your viewpoint on sparking an international conversation.
Well, I think what my publicist meant from that is that I've been on the number one Today show of London, of the UK. I've been on the number 2 Day show of the UK. And so there's been a lot of dialogue. I'll be on a TV show next week in Japan. So there's been a lot of international curiosity and conversation about the book. In Nigeria, women really bleaching their skin is something that's happening quite a bit over there.
We have that issue in
the Caribbean as well.
We have a lot of women, they're bleaching their skin to a lighter color. So yes, we do have that issue in the Caribbean. I know Jamaica has, there were a couple of documentaries that Jamaica did on it, but it is a Caribbean-wide problem.
And so colorism is a worldwide issue. It has always been the lighter the color going to white, and the darker the shade going to darker black. There's always been an economic, perception. Just immediately, economic perception, intelligence perspective, business perspective based on colorism.
Yes. Now, do you cover some of that in the book as well?
Oh, yes, I do. One of the great things that I'm so very, very proud of, every interviewer who's interviewed me and then read the book has called back for a second interview.
Wow. Okay. So I look forward to doing that as well.
Thank you.
Okay. One more thing. You said something that was interesting. I'd like to know what was your approach on it. In the beginning, you said you did do some research in tracing your ancestors to your great-great-grandparents. What was it like trying to do that research?
It was tough. I literally had to have a team go down to Montgomery, Alabama, which is the capital of Alabama, and the library there has all of the, you got to spend days to get through it, but you can, there in Montgomery, Alabama, at the public library, it's just meant spending time going and finding it.
So you see your family tree, there's ways to research the family tree that way.
Yeah. Because I have things like I didn't know there's an article that was written about my grandfather that in 1910 he was 26 years old and at the head of his household, and he had 8 people from his mother to brothers, nieces, and nephews. That was at 26 years old. He was the head of the household. I didn't know he was 42 when he married my grandmother, who was 22. I didn't know things like my grandmother had had brothers that were twins, which kind of explained why one of my daughters have twins.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, that's really great. I mean, I hope I can probably do something like that sometime in life as well. Well, I'm happy that you were able to take the time to discuss your new book. How can folks get the book right now?
Well, right now they can go to Amazon, and that's where they can get the book, the hard copy or the digital version. We're expanding the reach over the weeks. It'll be everywhere. And also today, if you like to get the hard copy, and I will sign the book and ship it back to you. And the website address is MathewKnowles.com, and there's one T in Matthew, MathewKnowles.com.
Okay. Is there anything that you want to discuss about the book that I didn't get to ask you in the interview?
Well, Sam, I could talk for hours about this book, but I think you did a great job in covering the basics. Again, the social courage thing is really important, that we utilize our social courage. And the second part of that is voting. And I'm so proud of what happened in Alabama recently in the state election, that 98% of all African-American registered voters went out to vote, and it made a difference.
Yes. The last time we spoke, you were releasing the DNA of successful achievers. So
DNA of achievers, which, because of your support and others, it went to number one on Amazon.
Congratulations. And I'm happy to be able to touch base with you on this book.
Thanks again for your time. Thanks for this great, insightful interview, and make it a great day.
All right. Thank you, and have a great day.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.